let's say that someone chooses yes. They're like, I love money. I want to have more of it. I want my money working for me. Nicole has sold me. I want to start investing. Where should we start?
I mean, I'm glad that you decided that. Money is amazing. It's an amazing tool. It's just that, a tool. It can be used for good or evil, like, any tool. A hammer can be used to build a house or to tear it down. It's how you use it. And I say, and this is where your incredible work comes in, is that money without meaning is just paper. And so it's the meaning that you apply to it is like, let's get the money first, and then we can figure out the meaning component. But first we need the money. And so if you're deciding today is the day, hell yeah, you need a brokerage account. So there's a bank account and a brokerage account. So hopefully you have a bank account at least, and that will be, where you put your savings, your checking account, like a Bank of America, Chase type of account. A brokerage is different. I just had somebody on the show who thought they bought Apple stock at the Apple store, which is, like, how else would they know where to buy Apple stock? And they were like, I went to the Apple store and I couldn't buy Apple stock. Well, first of all, if you can buy an iPhone, you can buy stock. There's stocks that are, I think Apple is less than $200 Apple stock right now. I don't know what an iPhone is right now, but it's probably close to
$1,100.
$1,000. Right. You can buy a few shares of Apple stock if you can buy an iPhone right now. And you buy that through a brokerage, so not through the store, even though there are a lot of companies that you use every single day that you can invest in and you can be, a shareholder in. But a brokerage would be like a Fidelity or a Vanguard or a Schwab or an E-Trade. None of them, these companies pay me to endorse it. They can if they'd like, but they're all the same, honestly. It's like whatever brokerage I like for you is the one you're actually going to stick to and use, because ultimately they're very, very similar. Like if you like the coloring.
And they have similar fees. Like that was the advice I always got, was just make sure you're doing like a low fee index fund. And I was like, what does that even mean? But I was like, oh, well, if they're charging like a 1% fee, but you're only making 4 or 5%, that's like 20% of what your money is earning.
Yes.
So like a low fee index fund. And I think
Talk
Vanguard does have
dirty
low
to me.
I know. I will.
They all have low cost ones, which is the advice, or actually what Warren Buffett put in his will for his wife, one of the greatest investors of our time. He told his wife to put his own money, their money, 90% in low cost S&P 500 index funds, and we can double click on what those are, and then 10% in bonds. But yeah, over time, like beating the market, this idea that you're going to find somebody that's going to beat the market is just fake. Over time, the market has yielded 7 to 10% inflation adjusted. And so to take advantage of that, 1% is a really high fee, just to sort of put this in perspective. You want much lower than that when you're, because they add and they eat into your returns, as you rightly know. So you should be very mindful of that. Mutual funds are also notoriously high on fees. Those are like more actively managed accounts versus passive funds like an index fund. But like, I'm probably throwing down way too much jargon. So like, let's step back. And so what the fuck is an index fund? First of all, what is an index? An index, do we know what that is, Emily?
I don't. I mean,
Okay.
I think it's like where like you list all the companies, like where the stocks of the companies are being reported. Like Apple went up, Facebook went down, and then in the next, like in the fund, you're having different companies in your portfolio.
Kind of.
But I don't know what
Kind of. So like, have you listened to the news and heard the Dow is up or the Dow is down, or
Yeah.
the NASDAQ or the S&P 500, those are up or down?
Yeah.
Those are indexes. So,
Okay.
so the Dow is an index of 30 of the biggest companies out there. And so the NASDAQ is a much more tech heavy index. The S&P 500, guess how many companies are in that one? Like the 500.
500.
Yay! The biggest stocks are
Right,
in
the
there.
money gun.
Yes, exactly. And so when you're buying into an index fund, you're buying a little baby piece of all of those companies, basically. the different funds track in different ways, but the way to find a index fund that is, so there's index funds that are ETFs and there's index funds that are mutual funds. And so if you open up a brokerage account, I've also had somebody on the show who said they typed in index fund and nothing came up. Nothing is going to come up if you type in just index fund. You have to type in what's called a ticker symbol, and a ticker symbol is like basically the address for what this fund is. And so really popular low-cost S&P 500 index funds. I'm not endorsing them. Do your own research, but like take a look at companies like SPY or VOO, and those would be low-cost S&P 500 index funds that we talked about. And buying in to one of those, you buy built-in diversification across all these 500 companies. What I like about the S&P 500, and Warren does too, is that like if you invest in that index, it will kick out the shitty companies if something happens to them, because like part of the index is like you have to be a certain market cap and you have to be in good standing and all of these things. And so if something happens to one of those companies, it gets kicked out, and another more legit, steadfast company gets replaced within that.